Strategic ambitions in the global startup arena. We are going to explore this in the next half an hour or so. Also, we'll delve into the policies and innovations driving Malaysia's goal to rank among the top 20 global startup ecosystems by 2030. I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah, and this is Money Matters. Welcome to your favorite channel, TV3, where you can also stream on Tonton. Today we have the Malaysia Venture Capital and Private Equity Association with its chairman, Ng Sai Kit, with me right here in the studio. Welcome to Money Matters, Sai Kit. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Can I start off by asking you, Malaysia aims to rank among the top 20 global startup ecosystems by 2030. Now, what specific strategies and initiatives do you believe are crucial for achieving this goal?
I guess it is a whole country kind of approach whereby we are talking about many facets to make it happen. So essentially, we need to look at what segments are we going to focus as a country, right? I think the Prime Minister has been talking about E&E being one of the significant industry. We also need to talk about talent. Therefore, I think in terms of the national policy and strategy, we talk about how to bring very established startups to establish the office over here, and thereby with a bit of a spillover in terms of the talent. We also talk about how do we need to make sure that we also attract enough capital to be based here. Then we have a really robust ecosystem.
Right. Yeah. So by mentioning that attracting capital to be here means the government has got to be very actively involved in attracting this.
Yeah, certainly. In terms of some of the recent policy, during the KL20, it's all articulated in the KL20 action plan, action paper, right? So ultimately, we are looking at how do we actually establish the ease of setting up funds based out of Malaysia, and also I think the much awaited fund of fund is going to come on stream pretty soon. After the integration of MAVCAP, and even Penjana under the umbrella of Khazanah. So I guess at the end of the day is about once that's happening, then there will be quite a lot of fun activities in terms of how some of the GLICs, even our sovereign fund Khazanah will come together and how to coming up with a strategy as to how to deploy the capital to ensure that we have got a pretty interesting road ahead of us as a country.
So it was reported as well, can I just quote here?
Yeah.
It is important that the government also looks into how Malaysia is going to connect with the region and the world on multiple fronts in terms of bringing investment in where startups are concerned. I mean, is this something that you agree upon as well?
I think certainly. As a country, we only have got 30 over million people, right? So then, in the grand scheme of things, compare ourselves against the entire Southeast Asia, 600, 700 million people. So certainly we represent only like a fraction of the population in terms of how is that important? It's important in terms of the consumer spending, in terms of the businesses that are operating over here. So, from the onset, all our founders from the startup ecosystem itself have already started looking at, regional, if not global, from day one itself. So that has been, how we have been charting forward, since the beginning, right? What happens then is that, pre-COVID, then there is this flush of cheap money going in and chasing after unicorns and all that. Then naturally it will gravitate towards country with larger population or whatnot. I think that has already given us a pretty much a good run in terms of educating the ecosystem, building up very successful startup. And now we are at a phase where we need to kind of rejuvenate ourselves, right? Because since the crossover funds, the likes of all the the hedge fund from the US and all that, they are no longer very active over here, being very selective, then it gives us the opportunity to look at ourselves and see that what has been our strength. And therefore, with that, then, we have got a pretty interesting playbook moving forward. Yeah.
You say what has been our strength. So looking at the region, competitively, we are also competing with our neighboring countries in terms of bringing in this fund. So what do you think sets us apart in terms of people looking at us?
Well, I guess there are two elements that I'd like to discuss here. Number one is, playing on our strength. Number one is the diversity that we have, right? So it's always easy to launch in Malaysia because of the different ethnic group and how ready we are in terms of dealing with international business, right? So in the past, we have already been looking at working with the British and the Japanese and all that. So we are very so used to dealing with international business partners, right? Of course, don't forget China, right? So I guess that's where we are. And in fact, having not flush with so much capital in the past couple of years gave us that kind of blessing now, if we look back, right? Because from the beginning, all our founders has always needed to look at profitability, path to profitability from day one itself. So that sets us apart in terms of, in times of adversity or whatnot, founders in Malaysia tend to actually be able to survive, trying times, right? But of course, I'm saying all this also not forgetting all the challenges that we have in terms of the funding ecosystem, right?
Okay, hold that thought. We've just got to go for a very quick commercial break. Stay with us on Money Matters. We're talking to Ng Sai Kit, Chairman of Malaysia Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Don't go away. Welcome back to Money Matters. We're talking to Ng Sai Kit, Chairman of Malaysia Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Now, Sai Kit, as Chairman of MVCA, what key factors do venture capitalists and private equity investors prioritize when evaluating investment opportunities in Malaysian startups?
Well, certainly, Kevin, happy to share that. It's technically a VC investment 101, right? So a couple of key areas that we will focus in any investment that we look into. Number one is really the scale, right? The scalability of the business. Whether are we talking about a multi-billion kind of opportunity, or we're talking about a business that is addressing such a niche market, and therefore, the prospect of growth and whatnot is very limited, right? So, of course, we also need to look into the validation by customers, validation by the stakeholders that the startup has actually spoken to, right? Then, of course, the background of the founders matters a lot, whether they are a serial entrepreneur, are they a loner, as in, are we talking about a sole founder? That matters a lot because some VCs typically place this as one of the check boxes. If they see a single founder, they may not touch. But depending on the practices.
Why?
Well, I guess, hearing what they've shared is essentially talking about how lonely they are as a founder, because you are facing with all sort of challenges in terms of the funding, the product development, right? Even your team and the competition. The challenges come from all facets, and hence, it's very, very difficult. It's not impossible. It's a bit difficult to kind of face it all alone, right? So I guess it depending on what school of thought you are, right? And of course, we also look into the viability in terms of the exit, because as an investor, we go in, of course, with a view that we want to make an outsized return, right? Depending on the risk profile, right? So some of these are go into play, when we evaluate an opportunity.
Okay, can we move on to what extent does collaboration between government entities and private sector stakeholders drive policy making in support of sustainable startup growth?
I think at the end of the day, it's about, it's a lot more relevant when it comes to, the sectors that matters a lot, for the national interest. For instance, we are making a lot of noise in terms of, okay, let's make our E&E sector, the semiconductor sector great again, right? After what is the net benefit of the fight of the two titans, right? So we here we are, whereby government will actually put a lot of support behind the sector in terms of maybe tax incentive, policy, or even to an extent the availability of funds, from all the government-linked investment corporations going behind some of these hand-picked, successful or potential startups, right? So that's one hand, right? On the other hand, I guess we also need not forget about the national interest in terms of some of the let me go. For example, the food security. We have been the net importer of food for so long, right? So I guess that is one of the key areas that, as a nation, we need to address, and therefore there are quite a lot of initiative that is backing behind it in terms of awareness, in terms of even incentive from the government side, in terms of how they set aside matching fund to co-invest with the private sector. So all these are happening now as we speak.
Looking at the different segments, how do you foresee the growth of Malaysia's startup ecosystem contributing to broader economic advancement? You did speak a little bit about how we should move forward. And which sectors do you anticipate will benefit the most?
I think as a startup, what I usually like to talk about is that how quickly the money that is being deployed into the startup ecosystem could immediately create jobs right away. And in in sectors that are promoted, especially, then you have the innovation coming in, you have the food security coming in. We also have got all the climate issues, climate tech, addressing some of the global warming challenges, So all these are life-changing technology that we're investing into, right? That's number one. Secondly, also, is another form of investing in R&D. Right, I think it's a known fact that some of our corporates or even as a country we have been underinvest compared to more advanced countries like South Korea or whatnot. So I guess directing some of the capital into startup that is innovative and nurturing new technology, then we are talking about another form of R&D, right? So to answer your second part of the question is about what sectors or whatnot. I've touched about it. The semicon has been very important, right, in terms of the percentage of the GDP of the country, right. We certainly need to talk about the renewable energy, because now we have got a lot of attention in terms of how we as a nation move forward in terms of the artificial intelligence and whatnot, with so many data centers that are being promised to be built here, right. Then with data center, it means we need to address the climate challenges, right? So the climate tech need to come in, right? And also not forgetting the renewable, because you can't fuel all these data center with our gas-powered stations, right? So all these, is quite important. And of course, not forgetting the food security, yeah? And we have got a major issue in terms of alternative materials as well. I think recently you probably heard about how microplastic have already penetrated into our bloodstream, right? It appears in every facet of our life now, right? Hence, I'm also quite eager to see new innovation coming in to eradicate and also at least substitute plastics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, hold that thought. We've just got to go for a final commercial break. Stay with us on Money Matters. We're talking to Ng Sai Kit, Chairman of Malaysia Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Thank you for staying with us on Money Matters. Now, talking about economic contributions, what societal benefits can Malaysian startups bring, particularly in terms of job creation and fostering innovation across sectors?
Well, I guess it's the power of capital, right? Moving forward in terms of, how we could utilize capital in a more efficient way, right? And by channeling them to segments that are underserved, right? For instance, personally in my other job other than this chairmanship, right? We also invest quite a lot in terms of companies that has got a financial inclusion agenda, right? With that, then you know that, okay, when you're doing innovation, right, you are also at the same time serving socio-economic segments that are neglected or underserved. For instance, let me give you one example. There's a company that we invested that really addresses the need of gig workers, right? They are informal, right? Certainly, when you talk about what sort of protection do they have, well, it's basically living hands to mouth, most of them. So now with that kind of technology, how can we do a bit of, number one, upliftment of income? Secondly, when that happens, then we talk about, okay, how can we introduce some form of a very affordable insurance to give them a bit of protection, right? As they continue to elevate, then there is already some form of data and relationship a startup will have with them, right? And therefore, with this, then you could actually continue to elevate their livelihood by introducing them with, compounding interest, investment, so to speak, right? So it's a lifelong kind of impact that we are creating, right? That's one example, right? Of course, along the way we talk about climate, we talk about food security. Food security, I think it comes with different forms and shapes. One example could basically just coming in with a bit of a technology to make, agriculture attractive again, right? Especially towards the youngsters, right? I think there's already some trend, some impact, right? So what we need to do is just to continue to nurture new upstart, so that they could actually give a new life to the old sectors, old industry that think is dirty, is dangerous and whatnot. So technology could actually solve quite a lot of all these.
Like the plantation industry as well.
Yeah.
So looking at the regulatory environment in Malaysia, right? So how does the regulatory environment in Malaysia support startup success? And what improvements do you think through your association could enhance its effectiveness?
I think on one hand, like I said, I shared that there are quite a bit of work that needs to be done in terms of how do we ensure that our local funding ecosystem is on par with some of the developing countries or developed countries, right? So that then we are on a level playing ground, right? So that involves a bit of a reform. It also involves a bit of policy changes, right? With that in place, then we have got another set of hurdle to cross, as in where is the capital, right? I mean, the government already realized that there is a disproportionate heavy contribution by the sovereign fund or whatnot into the funding ecosystem in the past, right? But there are already plans in the works to reduce that dependency, so that gradually we can actually activate some of these private, what we call a laden capital, lock into property, lock in land, to basically ask them to reallocate, right? So that then it could be a channel towards some of these innovation and technology and activities that will promote the competitiveness of our country.
Yeah. But that would be quite a challenge as well, changing those that usually would want to invest in land into something totally different, right?
Yeah, I guess a lot of education is needed, right? And therefore, as an association, as a VC, we always talk to our close friend in Securities Commission, because they are the one who is looking after the capital market plan, right? Part of it is to basically how do we diversify the contributors of capital in the market, and therefore, those are the work that we need to continue doing.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about emerging technologies. So the emerging technologies that are influencing the landscape of Malaysian startups. What trends do you see that would drive industry transformation?
Well, I think we are yet over with this, what we call the Industry Revolution 4.0. We are still in the midst of it, right? With that, then we are talking about how a machine could talk to each other. So that is your invention of 5G and all the deployment of Internet of Things, right? That's one segment. Of course, I would not do justice without touching AI, right? So I guess the uplift in terms of productivity and even the exploratory of knowledge or whatnot is certainly going to be there. So we just have to make use of generative AI in a responsible way, right? And of course, well, we've got a pretty interesting pool of talent that has got good ideas, when it comes to biotech and all that. Yeah, so we're not short of all these talented researchers or whatnot. I guess, to touch on some of the challenges that we have, one of them that I forgot to mention is, how do we unlock some of these invention from the R&D institutions within the public university or even private to some extent? How do we actually unlock them so that they can actually find a meaningful path of commercialization moving forward? I think if we have an answer and are able to solve this, then we have a lot of interesting stuff ahead of us.
But I'm sure it will be with the involvement of the government as well to ensure that these...
Well, it's basically all stakeholders' engagement, right? So well, I think the government right now have already kind of put in a good momentum, right? And what we need to do is basically to see more private sector and public sector, collaborate together and to drive an outcome that we want.
Okay. Yeah. Saikid, thank you very much for appearing on Money Matters. It has been a pleasure having you with us.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
For the past half an hour, you've been with us on Money Matters. If you missed the earlier part of this episode, you can also catch it up on Tonton. I'm Zahir Kelvin Ong Abdullah. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.